Hi, it is time for TMG.
Hey, it's time.
It's time.
It's
time for TMG.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to TMG. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. I enjoy discovering and sharing real-life moments of inspiration from everyday people. And this show is about finding moments of inspiration for our everyday lives. And look, and if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. Hi, everybody! Welcome to a brand new episode of TMG. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. Hey, guys, real quick before we get started, you know how I like to do this. Don't forget to visit, share, and subscribe to our YouTube page. That's Tell Me Something Good with a capital T. And as always, I want to give a huge shout out to my biggest supporter, my biggest fan, my loving wife, Nicole. Hey, girl, how you doing? I know you're watching. I know you're listening. Man, today's episode is absolutely going to be great. You're going to be so glad that you tuned in today. I know that I am glad that you are here. And whether this is your first time tuning in, your very first time listening to the show, let me take this time to tell you thank you. And whether you're listening in the UK or in Canada or in Portugal or in Spain or Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico, Japan, China, Portugal, wherever you are around the globe and you're listening to TMG, let me take this moment to tell you thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. Yes, Australia. I'm glad that you're here also. Wherever you are listening to the show, I'm glad you're here. Do me a favor, guys. If this is your very first time tuning in, your very first time hearing my voice or watching this, do me a favor. In the chat, type the word new, N-E-W. Yeah, just type the word new for me. If you want to type in where you're listening to this from, go ahead and do that also. But say with Travis, man, I'm not watching the show. Cool. That's okay. If you're listening to this for the very first time, shout out news. Just say I'm new. I'll hear it through the airwaves, guys. I'm so glad that you're here. And if you say, well, Travis, man, I'm not new. I've been listening to your show ever since you've been streaming. Let me take this very special moment and pause to tell you thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. Guys, today's episode, like I said, is absolutely amazing. And it's dear to my heart. It means a lot to me, guys. Before we get started, though, guys, everybody knows that this show is all about finding moments of inspiration in our everyday lives. So if you have an inspiring story that you'd like to tell and maybe come on the show, drop me an email at tellme21@gmail.com. That's tellme21@gmail.com. And you say, Travis, listen, man, I know someone that has an amazing story and would be great for your show, but I don't want to come on a show, man. I'm a little camera shy. That's okay. You can still send us their information at tellme21@gmail.com. That's tellme21@gmail.com. And guess what? You can even remain anonymous if you like. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and play some information by our sponsors. I'm going to get that out the way. Once I do, I'm coming back and bring out special guests, and we're going to get started. Don't go away, guys. We're just getting started. That's right. Come on in. Click on in. Listen, guys, we'll be right back, y'all. I'm not going nowhere. Walmart is a proud associate sponsor of TMG Tell Me Something Good podcast. Please use the special link bit.ly Tell Me Something Good and visit our sponsor. Remember, I may earn a commission when you buy through this link. Fanatics is the place to go for all of your officially licensed sports gear from your favorite sports and sports teams. Use the special link bit.ly/Tell Me Something 21 and pay a visit to our sponsor today. Remember, I may earn a commission when you buy through this link.
Breaking your phone sucks. Breaking your phone, then trying to sell it online sucks. Breaking your phone, selling it online, only to find out that the money you'll only get for it sucks. Breaking your phone, selling it online for peanuts, shipping it, and finding out that you got scammed sucks. Gizmodo makes selling your phone fast, safe, and simple by paying you the highest price for your device. And with Gizmodo's free unlimited shipping and price guarantee, millions of people are starting to sell on Gizmodo. Fast, safe, simple. Gizmodo, the best way to.
There it is, guys, right there. Please visit one of our affiliate sponsors. The information is below in the chat. And if you are listening to this either on Spotify, Pandora, or whatever is your favorite streaming platform, guys, listen up because you will hear it later on in the show. Guys, today's episode, I'm excited about it. If you have not gotten the name or the title of the episode, guys, today's episode title is, guys, Mirror Images. Yeah, mirror images. Now I know right now somebody's wondering, where in the world is Travis going to go with that? Have you ever seen someone that couldn't resist walking past a mirror without stopping to check out their reflection or see how they look? I know. We've all done it at one point in time, right? We've all done it. We've all walked past the mirror. We kind of checked out how our shirt looked, or if you're wearing your dress, how your dress looked, your hair looked, your shoes. We all done it. We've all kind of walked past that mirror sometimes, and it was just hard to resist stopping and looking at yourself. Sometimes walking past a mirror can be a little bit difficult to resist it, you know, and sometimes we look for mirrors because we like to check ourselves out, see how good we look. If you knew, let me just ask you guys this question. If you knew looking into a mirror could make you look 10 to 15 pounds thinner, how often would you stop and look at yourself? Or if you knew looking into a mirror would make you 10 or 15 pounds thinner, how often would you look yourself? If you knew looking into a mirror could make you look more stronger and healthier, how often would you stop to check yourself out? How often would you stop to check yourself out if you knew looking into a mirror could make you thinner? How often would you stop and look into a mirror if you knew looking into a mirror could make you healthier? It could make you stronger. How often would you stop and look into a mirror and check yourself out? Listen, it can be hard to resist for even the most modest of individuals looking in that mirror. Yeah, even the most modest of people, every now and then you can catch them stopping and looking in that mirror. It's very hard to resist. For some, finding the strength to resist an addiction can become difficult and become the same way. It's hard to resist because an addiction of any kind is more than just a matter of willpower. Joining us today, guys, is a special guest who knows what it's like to walk through this process of resisting an addiction. He is a father, a wellness coach, and an author of the book Sober in 7. Guys, do me a favor. Give a huge TMG welcome to Andy Smith. What's up, Andy? How you doing?
Hey, how are you? This is amazing.
Great, man. How you feeling today, Andy?
Man, I tell you, I'm as a reserved Brit compared to what you're doing. I feel like I'm just on a journey here. You know, I love it. You're making me just smile here with the energy you're projecting, and thanks for having me on the show. You know, it's I really enjoy kind of talking about my journey, and I think you framed it really well with the whole thing around addiction, and I think it's an important conversation to have. This has been buried for too long, and I love your mirror thing, and obviously we'll get onto that a little bit later in terms of how a mirror vicariously had quite a big impact on me. But I guess, yeah, as somebody who struggled with alcohol addiction pretty much all of my adult life and finally found a way to overcome it, it's good just to kind of share a story of hope.
Absolutely.
There'll be people listening to this, I'm sure, that are probably going from kind of like, maybe I should make some tweaks and changes to what I'm doing, to people maybe who are really struggling, and maybe it's having a negative impact on their lives. And there's I think if you take one thing away from this, is kind of like there's no kind of one size fits all on this kind of thing. We kind of think of somebody with a drink problem, a homeless guy sleeping on a park bench or something like that. And it takes many forms.
Absolutely, man. And I'm glad you're here. And I'm gonna tap something you said real quick. You said you're a reserve Brit. Where are you right now, Andy?
So I grew up at the very, very northern part of the UK, the Shetland Islands, which is kind of between Shetland and Norway. But actually, I live down near London now. I'm just west of London, and it's a nice part of the world, actually. Lots of nice people. We've got some rain today, unfortunately. So spring is not quite yet sprung in the UK.
Yeah, not quite. So Shetland Islands, where we get the Shetland ponies. If you ever heard
That's
of
correct.
Shetland ponies, guys, that's where they come from.
Yeah.
From over in the UK, guys. I told you, TMG, man, is across the borders. I told you we're worldwide, guys. I did that. I really did. And Andy, I'm so glad that you're here. I love what you're saying already, man, because this is going to be good. You said everything is not one size fits all. And when you think about mirror images, no one's reflection looks the same. No one's reflection looks the same. It doesn't matter if you grew up in the same house. I guarantee you, your reflection doesn't look the same as your brothers, your sisters, your aunties, your cousins, your moms, your dads. Everybody's reflection is different, and you have to approach it in that manner. Andy, we talked a lot before the show, guys. I did. We talked a lot, and it was like we were brothers from different sides of the world. I'm not joking, man. I am not joking. And it was really, really good. So we talked a lot before the show, man. Help us out. You started giving us a little bit of your background. Please share with everyone a little bit more about your backstory and to set the stage for things, if you will, Andy.
Yeah. I mean, so I drank heavily from the age of probably 13 to when I was 50, when I finally gave up 8 years ago. And it's alcohol and I have had this really kind of weird relationship. And I think a lot of it was laid down growing up on a small Scottish island. There wasn't a lot to do. So you tended to make your own entertainment, make your own fun. A lot of that tended to revolve around drinking. And very much the culture was, I certainly as a young man who was trying to kind of find out who he was and things like that, one of the quickest ways to validate yourself was to, demonstrate how much you could drink. And, the people who couldn't had their drink, as you would say up in Shetland, were regarded as being a failure. And I battled against that, even though I wasn't necessarily that aware of it. I was trying all these different things to try and sort my drinking out.
Right.
Created issues with my previous marriage. It was ruining my health, but it was funny. I still held on to it as kind of like, well, yeah, but if you can't drink like a man, then you're not a man
Right.
almost. And
Wow. Wow.
saying that out loud sounds insane, but it's not rational. This is the thing, you know, any addiction is emotional. It's about emotional cravings. It's about desire.
Right.
It's
Right.
and unfortunately, a lot of the narrative out there, and certainly when I was looking for my answers, you know, I mean, I spent a decade really seriously trying to sort myself out.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the conventional approaches are very rational. It's like, you know,
Right.
they'll say, oh, well, keep a diary of how much you're drinking. Why?
Why?
You know, it's like,
That was-
I know I drink too much. Do you honestly think putting it down on paper is gonna, you know, I mean, I would sit and drink up to a liter of spirits in one go.
wow.
And, you know, I didn't need a diary to tell me that that was a problem, you know? But it's, you know, and things like I went to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and, you know, and I was sat there in the room. My background, I was very successful business guy in the kind of selling and influencing across the kind of healthcare space. And I'm sat there in a meeting for AA and trying, presumably, I mean, I don't particularly subscribe to the term alcoholic because again, it tends to be very one size fits all. And
Right.
labels sometimes can be helpful, but actually they tend to kind of imprison you. And it was just really interesting. I thought all these people here are trying not to be an alcoholic by calling themselves alcoholics, you know, and there's people there who've been going to these meetings for 20 years saying, you know, hello, my name's Dave, I'm an
I'm an
alcoholic.
alcoholic. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, and you've been saying that for 20 years, and for some unfathomable reason, you're not sure why you're not better, and it
Say
just
that,
didn't make
man.
any sense to me. And you know, some of this stuff, I mean, it's like the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, you know, where it's kind of you go into it with a kind of a almost like a childlike naivety, expecting one thing, and then I was just like, this makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I tried everything. I went to see my doctor, and she said to me, she said, "Oh, do you drink during the day?" And I said, "Well, no, because I have a job and things like that." And she said, "Oh, well, then don't worry. You're not that word again. You're not an alcoholic."
What?
And I'm kind of like, well, I'm here asking for help, and because I know it's not right, and
Right.
yet
Right.
you're saying there's nothing wrong with me. And I'm like, I'm here telling you that there's something really
Something
wrong
wrong.
here. And I tried hypnotherapy and went to counseling for a year and a half. And, you know, again, just a lot of this stuff, it never really tackled the kind of the issue, which was I wanted to move on from drinking. A lot of it was, you know, let's try and understand why you might drink or something like that. And okay, maybe there may have been some value in that, but you know, I'm a child of the 60s. I'm adopted, and I could see this therapist, his eyes lighting up, and it's kind of great. We've got childhood abandonment and abandonment
we got
trauma
those
here.
issues
Yeah,
going on,
whoa.
yeah.
And the thing is, I've always been quite proud of being adopted. My folks had always explained everything to me. Always said, "Look, you know, you want to go and find your natural parents. We'll support you."
That's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
and I've always had an amazing relationship with them. I'm very grateful. I'm nearly 59. Both my parents are still alive. Got an
Awesome,
amazing
man.
relationship with them. I'm very lucky. And and this guy was trying to tell me that this was a problem, and I thought, well, okay, maybe you're the expert. You know, maybe there's something deep seated buried within me. And after a year and a half of exhausting counseling, you know, and I would literally finish at 9 p.m. on a Monday night, and I would go home via the supermarket or the off license and get myself a bottle of wine because I was wrung out, you know.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I started to apply some of the stuff that I'd learned in a business setting that I started to get better and get past this. Because, you know, in business, if you've got an issue, you don't sit around and try and just, you know, say, okay, well, my name's Andy and I have this business issue, and hope it'll take care of itself. You don't, focus on the guilt and the shame associated with,
Right,
or
right.
try and, spend all your energy trying to understand how the problem may have come about. You may need that information, but actually, isn't it better to just kind of go, right, let's fix it. Let's look forward. What do we want
Right,
instead?
right. What do we got to do to fix this? Exactly.
Yeah. And it struck me that it's strange that nobody was thinking that way with regards to this. And it was, I things were starting to get really bad for me. My health was suffering. I was traveling a lot, drinking a lot. And then one day I had a huge panic attack in my local supermarket, and I collapsed. And I remember getting help to my feet by this little old lady who was asking me if I was okay. And I'm, oh yeah, sorry, I just slipped. And I remember just sitting there literally in one of the meat fridges, and I was sitting there looking at my feet, and I can remember it like it was yesterday, and just shaking my head and just going, man, you're not going to make it if you carry on like this.
Wow.
And so that kind of set a sequence of events in place, shall we say. And the mirror was actually part of this, in terms of just a general kind of awareness that if I'm going to do this, I've got to do it. Nobody's coming. I need to sort my own stuff out here.
Andy, listen, first of all, congratulations on your 8 years of sobriety, man.
Thank you,
Congratulations. I love hearing stories where people are able to resist the things that you crave. And let me help people out. If you're craving your favorite food or whatever it is, and you have the ability to resist it, you get the strength to, is more than just a strength, but you find a way to begin to resist what your body has built up a craving for. Yeah, your body's built up a craving for, your mind has built up a craving for something, and you find a way to resist it. So amazing. But you said something, Andy. You said, if it's going to be done, you have to do it. If it's going to be done, you have to do it. And that's where a lot of us, a lot of times, Andy, we have to realize, no matter what program we may be involved in, no matter what we do, whether we seek counseling, and I'm all for counseling, I'll tell you all day long. I'm all for counseling, I'm all for therapists. But at the end of the day, it's not the therapist's responsibility to fix your problem. They hand you the tools.
Absolutely.
You have to build a house. They give you the blueprints and the tools. You have to do it. If your problem is going to be fixed, you have to fix it. And there are people right now who I know you're listening. There are people right now who I know you're watching, and you may be struggling with something. You may be dealing with something. But if it's going to be fixed, you have to fix it. And we're talking about mirror images. We're talking about passing by that mirror and not being able to resist seeing your reflection. But if you knew seeing your reflection could make you healthier, would you stare into that mirror? And that means, Andy, if we're going to do it, we have to do it. We have to be willing to stare into that mirror and say, hey, I need to change my shoes. My shoes are dirty, or my shirt is wrinkled, or so. We have to be able to stare into that river. Did you ever feel, Andy, at any time, did you ever feel or ever find yourself dismissing any notion that there might be a problem? Because I've grew up around people who were alcoholics. And I don't want to say the word alcoholics. I'll just say I grew up around people who abused alcohol.
Yeah.
Because I'm like you, the word alcoholics confines people to that box and to that term. And then now they forever calling themselves alcoholic. But you're not. So it's the other things that's going on. So were there ever notions or times when you would kind of dismiss any notion that there might be a problem or that you had a problem?
I think anybody who's been addicted to anything, I think that's almost a full-time job, because you have to be able to tell yourself a story that makes you feel, let's use our mirror analogy. You know, you're brushing your teeth in the morning, you're looking at yourself in the mirror. You know, you're a nice person, and you have to be able to concoct a story that, even though you're maybe doing something that you hate, that makes you hate yourself, you've got to be able to frame it in such a way that you kind of can, you know, otherwise you will not survive. And this is a protection mechanism. You know, a lot of people will talk about things like cognitive dissonance, and it's the story that we tell ourselves. You know, it can be as ludicrous as, you know, I'm not fat, I'm big boned. But it's, you know, we need to tell ourselves a story that so we can survive. And so, you know, I think there's also a thing called learned helplessness, where if you try and fail to do something repeatedly, it's been shown in countless studies that you become less able to, you know, when presented with a solvable problem, you just assume from the outset that you're not going to be successful, and you generally aren't, because you've been around that cycle so many times. And you know, your story of the mirror is so relevant to me, because I talked about the situation that I had with in the supermarket, where,
Mhm.
you know, and you know, people talk about rock bottom and things like that. I guess that was probably kind of my rock bottom in a way. It was like, I'm not willing to put up with this anymore.
Mm,
But
mm.
at that point, I didn't have a way out. You know, I was like, right, okay, I'm in this. I need to make some changes.
Right, right,
I
right.
had no idea how to do it. And then literally probably 3 or 4 days later, I was running late for a meeting, and I was in the car, speeding along the road, driving faster than I should have done. And there's a railway crossing near where I live, a level crossing.
Okay.
And I'm driving up to it, and then the lights start to flash, which indicate there's a train coming, the barriers are going to come down.
Right.
And I floored the accelerator. I'm like, right, I'm going to beat these barriers. And the barriers are coming down. There's no way I'm going to make it. You know, I'm going to die if I carry on. Okay, so I screeched to a halt in front of these barriers. My heart is thumping, the adrenaline's
Right, right.
pumping.
You're all
And,
jacked.
and yeah, and you're like, kind of, oh, this is going to make me, you know, even later. And the Michael Jackson song, "The Man in the Mirror," was playing on the
Mm.
radio. And I'm sat there just fuming. And of course, being in the car, you've got the rear view mirror, you know, is right there. And it's the first line of the chorus is, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. And he says, I'm asking him to
Mm.
change his ways. And my entire life changed on that one word, asking. I went from beating myself up, belittling myself, criticizing myself, to posing a
Mm.
question. And I literally was looking at my reflection in the mirror, and I just went, come on, sunshine. Are you willing to do whatever it's going to take to make this change? And it was a bit like somebody else answered, you know, that part of me that I'd been fighting against for
Right, right.
decades just went, yeah, I'm ready. And so I called my boss and I said, look, I'm going to take some days off. And there's some stuff that I just need. I think I said I was not well or something. I need to get some rest or whatever. And there's a beautiful little lake near where I live. And I went home and I got all of the selling and influencing courses I'd been on. I went and I was dragging folders out
Uh-huh.
of the cupboard, putting them in the car, all the personal development work that I'd been doing, mindfulness, meditation, all this kind
Right,
of stuff.
all those
Put
wonderful
it,
things.
yeah, put it all in the car, And I drove down to this lake, and I parked up where the view was nice. And I had all this stuff, and I started going through it. And I was just like, look, I am really successful in business at changing how other people feel about things. I'm a really good salesman.
Mhm.
And why is it that I don't seem to be able to bring any of this to me? Why
Oh,
can't I?
wow. That's good. Oh, Andy, that's good, man.
And so, and it was interesting because it was all there in the car. I thought, okay, the answers are in here somewhere. They're not outside the car, they're inside the car. And I'm sitting there, I've got stuff spread out over the dashboard, over the seats, over the back seats. There's people going past, walking the dogs, looking at this crazy guy with all this stuff, thinking, what the hell's he doing? And bit by bit, I was starting to kind of get bits of inspiration and thinking, well, you know what? If I was doing this with somebody else, if I was, trying to sell somebody something really important, what would be the process that I would follow?
Okay.
And I was kind of, well, you'd start with a bit of that for sure. And then you'd do a bit of this and you'd be asking questions and you'd be doing your research on that. And then you'd probably start to throw a bit of this in. And then you'd be, you'd want to kind of bring some emotion to the kind of solution. We talked about desire and resisting desire. And it's kind of like, right, we want to put some emotion in there. And then we'll make a bit of a plan around what success would look like, how you keep momentum. And gradually this kind of pathway started to kind of sort of create itself in front of me, and some of which I'd tried before, but I tried it as a kind of a single item and it did not quite work.
Right.
So
it wasn't coupled together with other things. You just
and again I told myself that, oh well, it's obviously not that much of a problem, and and then swept everything under the carpet for another year or whatever. But now I had a process to follow, and I thought, right, okay, I'm just going to make a deal with myself, the man in the mirror moment. I'm going to start at the beginning and I'm going to work my way through this whole thing. And I'm not going to stop until I've got to the end of this process. Because I know this, I've seen this process work in so many other scenarios. Could it work for me? So I started to work my way through it. And I could feel, it was kind of like peeling an onion. You're kind of, as Shrek would say, it's like layers. Ogres have layers. And just as I started to kind of peel, I started to feel differently. And I couldn't really describe it. And I was there at this lake, dawn to dusk, for 3 days working this stuff out. And at the end of the 3 days, I really felt different. And I said to Louise, my partner, I said, something's happened here. I can't explain it, but I feel differently. And of course, we discussed my drinking many times, and she was kind of, okay, good, I think, but actions speak louder than words. And she's kind of going, yeah, well, we've been here before. We'll just see. I'm not going to get my hopes up,
right,
because I don't want to be crushed. And so days turned into a few weeks, and I started to kind of feel more confident. And I was like, okay, yeah, there's some kind of tough moments here in terms of resisting. But the thing was, and I think the key thing that was different this time is I developed quite a clear vision of what me not drinking looked, sounded, and felt like.
Good.
And I'd engaged with that. So even when I got those little tough moments where you felt the desire, the craving, there was kind of more at stake now. It wasn't just about, well, I've just got to resist. Actually, there's a prize that I'm working towards here. And that was enormously compelling to me. I often say to people, if at some point you're going to be faced with a decision, it's like option A, have a drink. Option B, don't have a drink. And if option B is no more compelling than don't do option A, then you're probably going to go back to the old behavior.
Yeah, you're going to go back to B. Absolutely.
Yeah. But if option B is, being a better father for your children, it's about being the partner that you always said that you would be when you were a young man, about being around to watch your grandkids play, as and when they
absolutely.
It's about not scaring the crap out of my parents. It's it's all of these things that I had formulated into this gift that I was looking to give myself. And so as I started to kind of walk this path, I remember very clearly one morning waking up, probably about 6 weeks in. The first couple of weeks were a bit rough, and you kind of
you still knew you're used to it. Right.
Yeah, and you get kind of anxiety related stuff going on and things like that. But about 6 weeks in, I remember waking up one morning and I'd slept really well, and I woke up and I just went, my God, I feel amazing.
I know, right?
And every morning is not like this for me. It's kind of life goes up and down just the same as anybody else. But the real interesting thing was, I remember lying there in bed and thinking, I cannot remember the last time I felt like this. And then I remembered back to in the supermarket, having collapsed, looking at my feet and just going, wow, this is quite the turnaround. And and actually, in terms of the gift, that this was something that I'd not really expected, because I'd forgotten what feeling well felt like. And I'd just been reminded of that. And I thought the last time I felt like this, I was probably a kid.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? I'm not going back. This is too precious. This is too good. So, that whole man in the mirror moment of, taking accountability, of
Exactly.
just going, right, okay, come on. This is all the problem is in here. It's in my head, and nobody's coming with a circular saw to come and try and do it for me. It's I've got to figure this out, and figure it out. I did, and thankfully, I'm very humbled to find that about 6,000 other people have
Awesome.
found,
That's fantastic, man.
it's worked for them, and so I now do this full time, and as I say, I was really successful in business, earning loads of money, the flash car sitting on the drive, and the big house, and all this kind of stuff. And actually, what I do now, just that stuff just pales into insignificance compared to, when you get an email from somebody. There was a guy put a post in my Facebook group, and he put a picture, and I'd worked with him for 6 months, and then we'd stayed in touch, but I'd not seen him for 6 months. And he put a picture up, and I was like, wow, is this even the same guy?
Same person?
He looked 20 years younger. He'd lost 4 stone, which is what, 56 pounds. He had reconnected with these young kids. He was actually giving his elder daughter away at her wedding. His relationship with his partner was absolutely brilliant. And he just sent me this amazing message saying thank you, and I'm always nervous when people thank me in that way, because it's kind of dangerous in a way, because then it makes it sound like I did it for them. And actually, in the same way that I took accountability, he took accountability as well. And, I'm just a guy that is kind of lighting the path, but you've got to walk it yourself. And he just embraced it. And it's so lovely to see somebody getting the benefits of it, and again,
right, absolutely,
of the guy sitting there after 20 years of AA meetings, still calling himself an alcoholic. I just feel, hey, great, if he's not drinking, fantastic. But I just think, you're missing out on so much more.
Correct. Correct.
And I think to look forward and not back, and to kind of, whilst it's kind of churlish to say, well, it's about falling back in love with yourself again, there's a huge element of truth in that. I used to wake up hating myself.
I know what you mean, man. I know what you mean, Andy. That waking up, that self-loathing, that never want you. And the worst part about it is not wanting to be around yourself, but you couldn't get away from yourself.
Yeah. And then that becomes self-perpetuating, because tonight, even though I've told myself that I'm not going to drink, it's like, actually, you know what? I just need to make this feeling go away for a bit. And there you go. Groundhog Day all over again.
And you're right back at it. And you said something, Andy, a couple of things you said. You said, man, you looked into this right here. You looked into this rear view mirror.
Yeah.
and you saw yourself and you saw things differently, begin to see a different perspective. And we have to understand we all have that mirror moment where we look into and see ourselves when it comes to certain things, whether it was drinking or whether it was smoking, whatever, or whatever the addiction is. Which kind of brings me to a segue to a point. You said you tried different programs. Which alcohol prevention programs did you try? Heard you mention AA.
Yeah.
How successful was it? I heard there was a funny story behind that.
Yeah, I mean, so I subsequently found out that AA's got a success rate somewhere in the 8 to 12% region, and
Uh-huh.
I went to a few meetings, and I remember there was a very sweet old lady came up to me at the end, and she was like, "Oh, what do you think? How's it working for you?" And I
Right.
said, this is not I think the approach for me. It's just not resonating with me. And she kind of went, that's because you've not hit rock bottom yet. And she was making it sound like it was an entry ticket. And
Right.
actually
Right.
the only kind of comparison I could make at the time, I said, I kind of feel like I've gone to Weight Watchers and only to be told that I'm not fat enough.
You're not fat enough. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
not fat enough for us to help you. You gotta
Yeah.
You
You
gotta
need
be
to come back
600 pounds.
when you're 600 pounds and you've had a heart attack. Then we can help you.
Then we
No
can help you.
problem.
Then we can help
Then
you.
we've got something you're going to be really interested in.
But right about now, nah.
But now, no,
Keep eating till you get fat enough. So basically, you just felt like keep drinking until you get to that point where you feel like you really need help, and you're like, if I'm here, I need help. If I'm willingly showing up, I need help. And for you to tell me that I'm not in a bad enough place, that's kind of an insult to my addiction and an insult to me as a person, because you're telling me that you don't have an answer for someone like me. And
Exactly right. Exactly
and
right.
you started off earlier, we were talking about earlier about mirror images and how no one's reflection is the same. No two people's reflection is the same. So what you're telling me is, in your mind, is I have to mirror image someone else here. If your program can accommodate someone whose image looks like mine in the mirror, then I don't need to drink more. You need to change your program.
Yeah. But the other thing as well was a lot of the stuff that I struggled with was that a lot of it was we think this,
Right.
and I'm thinking, I don't think that. And I got, so I took it on myself. I was kind of thinking, oh, there's something really, really wrong with me now, because obviously my thinking is wrong.
Right.
But actually,
the help people telling me that I'm wrong. The help people telling me that I'm not in bad enough shape to get help. So now it's more like it's my fault.
yeah. And like when I went to see the doctor, and she's saying, oh, well, you're not an alcoholic if you don't drink during the day. And it was, as you say, it was quite dismissive in terms of, and I thought, wow, if only you knew how much courage it took me to come and sit here in front of you and kind of say, I've got a drink problem and I need some help with it. And,
Exactly.
and to be told that there's basically nothing wrong with you, I was like, that's not how I feel. It's a bit like, there's a great joke, the late Tommy Cooper, who's a British comedian. I went to the doctor the other day and I said, I've got a sore leg. What did the doctor just said? He said, what will I do? And the doctor said, limp. And that's kind of how it felt.
Don't fix it, just don't fix it. Just deal with it. And let me,
exactly right. Yeah,
and let me say this right now. There are people right now who's watching and listening, and you feel like you should just deal with it. And I get it. Maybe you're at that stage of your addiction. Maybe you're in that stage of right now, all I can do is just deal with it. Maybe you've talked to people, and maybe you've tried to have a support group, and you've tried to join a social media support group. And right now, you're in that stage of I'm just dealing with it. Well, let me help you out. Everybody's part of their journey through addiction. part of it, you come through that point where you are just dealing with it day by day, minute by minute. But if you're in that point where that's where you've been 20 years now, and like we were talking about earlier, Andy, people just go and say, well, I'm an alcoholic. You're confining yourself. You're boxing yourself in, and you're never giving your a chance to grow, because if you don't see yourself better, you'll never become better. Let me say that again. If you do not see yourself better, you will never become better. Reminding yourself of your weakness, reminding yourself of the thing you can't resist. Always constantly reminding yourself of the things that you can't overcome. That's not going to make you better. You have to begin to mentally make that mental shift that you are a better person. Andy, so I understand you've had these different issues, these different things. Now I'm gonna say this about addiction, because people think sometimes, Andy, it's a matter of willpower. They just don't have enough willpower. They're just not strong enough. Or if you're in your religion, your faith belief, you just don't have enough faith behind it. What do you mean I don't have enough faith? So you think I just want to keep this problem? I reckon, and here's the thing, Andy, you mentioned this. When someone comes and tell you, I have an addiction, I have a problem, you do not understand the courage it takes for someone to openly admit to another human being, to another person, that they have a problem. Most people will never do that. Most people will never admit they have a problem, they have an issue. If someone comes and tells you they have an issue, you might not like the issue, you might not like the problem they tell you they have, but it's your opportunity to either say, I can help with you support with this, or I'm going to point you in the right direction. And addiction, just give everybody some information, general information about an addiction. An addiction can be a trauma-related response. So when Andy, when you talk about you were adopted, and your therapist just kind of hands thinking maybe it might be something trauma-related to that. You know, here's what I've learned, and I was talking to a therapist before the show to gather some additional information, and they said most addictions are trauma-related responses. And it could be one that we are aware of, or one that we're not cognizantly aware of. Our body could be doing this an unconscious response, and it's causing us to have this an addiction. But addiction can be a trauma-related response. Trauma isn't just about big life-altering events like a war or child abuse or something like that, you know, or anything like that. Abuse, it can also stem from childhood neglect, emotional invalidation, or even repeated exposure to stressful environments. For many people, an addiction becomes a way to cope with the pain of these experiences. So, Andy, a person can continue to go through stressful events, and all of a sudden, my best way to cope with this, you said this earlier, my best way to cope with this is I'll just do this. My best way to get through this thinking is just do this. Or it could be childhood neglect, emotional invalidation. Someone did, and there are a lot of people, Andy, I know, I was one of them, where I was emotionally invalidated. And until you begin to work through that thing, and if it's going to change, you have to change it. Until you begin to work through that thing, you will spend your life trying to find that emotional validation. It is either going to be in other people, it's going to be in unhealthy choices and behaviors. But if you're going to get healthy, it has to start with us, Andy.
Well, far be it from me to contradict your therapist contact. So here's the thing. You tend to see these kind of things from your own perspective.
Correct.
If you're a therapist, you're going to see a lot of people with trauma, with a correlation of addiction.
Correct. Whatever the addiction is, you're going to see it and say, hey, that matches
that. In my experience with people who come to me saying, look, I've got a drink issue, I would say the minority of people have some kind of tangible trauma.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I work with people who are struggling with, abuse, trauma, grief is a big one.
Right. Yeah, grief is.
But there are a lot of people that just say, I don't get it. My life is great. It's always been great. I just seem to be hell bent on wrecking it
Mm,
with my drinking. And now we get into the issue of the fact alcohol is a highly addictive substance. There is a
correct.
whole ecosystem of pressure, particularly when you're young, to consume it. Even from your parents.
Correct.
It's kind of
Absolutely.
like, oh, give him a little glass of beer and
Oh yeah,
everybody
it won't. It
laughs.
won't hurt him. It won't hurt him.
Exactly. And, I did an audit of birthday cards, for example, in that same supermarket where I
Uh-huh.
had my collapse. 65% of adult birthday cards basically say, it's your birthday, get drunk. This is
Yep.
subliminal advertising at its best. So
Absolutely.
for all those people that are sitting there and going like, I'm drinking way too much of this stuff, and yet I don't think I've got this kind of trauma. I mean, I sat for a year and a half with this therapist trying to convince me that I had childhood trauma when I
Uh,
didn't. And it's just I grew up in an environment where your validation, your kind of
ex-
manhood was
right.
measured.
The kind of social acceptance,
Yeah,
acceptance
and it was
into this social circle came from you have to do it this way. If you want us to accept you, this is the rite of
yeah.
passage. Your
If
rite
you
of
were
passage is do this.
if you were growing up in Shetland in the 1970s and 1980s, God help you if you weren't drinking.
Oh
You would
wow.
have been humiliated. So, there's an element of just I need to fit in here. I'm like at that age, I don't want to stand out on anything. But so the whole because I think sometimes, and the reason why, and sorry if I pushed back on that,
No, you're good. You're
what your
good.
therapist said, but I think some people are kind of scared of it's like, is there some kind of deep-seated thing that I need to kind of stare down? And that then feels like work. It feels like pain. Even though so
Mm,
you're in a painful situation now. I'm in this
now it's
addiction,
work.
but it's familiar. And actually, what I'm looking at is a route that is potentially painful, but
Mhm.
also unfamiliar. So I'm going to choose familiar pain over
Always,
unfamiliar pain.
always, because
And
you already know where to adjust. If your pain is in your leg, you already know. Yeah, let me adjust and start
yeah,
limping on this side. But if it's a new pain, you're like, okay, how do I even handle this? What do I even do
yeah.
with this? Now you have to concentrate more. Now it requires more work. Now it requires more of you to do it because this is a new pain. This is something different
Well,
here.
if you've got use your example, if you've got a sore knee and
Uh
it's you
huh.
can hobble around on it, when somebody says, "Okay, I can fix that," but it's going to be 6 months of excruciating therapy, but at the end of the 6 months, your knee will be completely pain free.
Uh
You're probably going to instantly go to, well, my knee's not that sore.
It's not that bad. Yeah, I
It's
could
not
deal
that
with
bad.
it. I could
Again,
deal with
I'm
it.
gonna cognitive dissonance. I'm no matter how much, I'm sat there in front of the knee doctor and going, my knee's really painful. All of a sudden, my knee's the least of my trouble. No, no, no,
No,
no, no.
no, I
You're
got
not,
I got bigger problems than this. I got bigger
yeah,
issues than this.
exactly. So, and I think a lot of this is, and this is part of the reason why the first thing I do when I'm working with people is we get eyes on the prize. It's
Mhm.
kind of, this has to feel like a good journey. This has to feel like a destination that's worth having.
Right,
And
right.
and you're saying, look, this is going to be a journey with some tough moments, but they are going to be that. They are going to be moments. They're not going to be a kind of a day in, day out, lifelong struggle, or this, with AA said, you've got an incurable disease that you'll battle every day for the rest of your life. It's like, oh, pass the bottle, no wonder they all relapse. But so you have to make this attractive because it is attractive. What
Correct.
this is a good thing that you're doing. And if you can't communicate that or get somebody at least engaged in that from the outset, then you're probably not going to be successful. So the trauma thing is interesting, and it can be very, very real. And I think particularly with grief, people often go through that thing where, you lose somebody very close to you. It's such a gut-wrenching pain emotionally. You will do anything to, even if it just removes it for a couple of hours, you'll take
Correct.
it. And I find with a lot of people that over time, alcohol is, I don't want to use the word necessary, but it's played its role, in the early days of acute, trauma, grief, whatever. But then it becomes its own negative, and
Yeah.
people start to go, actually, okay, this is now doing more harm than good. I
Exactly.
need to move on. And we know alcohol really stalls the grief process because it stops you actually getting into the emotions that you need to process. You just keep kind of pushing them away all the time. But again, that can feel scary. Yeah, to make this a positive experience, and to also understand, I would say in my experience, in the vast majority of cases, rather than it being one specific issue that's making you drink, there's probably 150 small ones,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
can play whack-a-mole trying to bat them all down, or you can just go, you know what, I'm here right now, and I want to move forward from this point. And at some point, there'll be some aspects of my past that'll come up, and I'll deal with them because that'll be the right thing to do. But for now, I'm going to look forward. I'm going to look up the mountain rather
Correct.
than down the
Correct.
mountain. That I've that path that I've gone over and over again. I've done that, and I'm now going to learn. And this is a process of learning. If you can bring curiosity to this, it takes all the pressure off. If you can say, well, what if? How would my life be better if somebody came with a magic wand and
Uh-huh.
just waved it and just made this thing go away? How would my life be better? Because that's the reality of what you're striving for. Not to say,
Correct.
unfortunately, there isn't a magic wand, but it's and actually, if somebody came with a magic wand, it's the main prize on this journey is not necessarily the attainment of the goal.
Right. It's not the
It's
goal.
who you become in the process of attaining the goal. It's what you learn about yourself.
Correct. Correct.
You overcome an addiction. I mean, none of us are born with a handbook, but if you overcome an addiction, you learn more about yourself and how you work than in any other scenario.
I would have segue into that part, Andy. Earlier we mentioned resistance. We talked about
Yeah,
resistance.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes the stigma that goes along with individuals with with alcohol addiction, or any addiction rather, or alcohol abuse, in this matter, is that they simply have low resistance. Oh, you don't have the willpower, you just can't resist anything, or no willpower. Through your own personal experience, what insights did you gain about people working through addictions?
On me, or in terms of for other people's?
On you, with you. What did you learn about? What did you learn in general about people working through addictions? Because prior to you realizing or looking in that mirror and identifying that there was an addiction, there was a perception of, well, I don't have a problem because my doctor I went
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
told me I don't have a problem. So when you finally realized that and you looked in that mirror, what was kind of insights that you learned?
Yeah, and I think one of the things was that, beating yourself up never works.
Right.
It just makes you feel worse, and then your natural instinct is to want to obliterate that feeling. I think, be learning to cooperate with yourself on anything, whether it's addiction or whatever, and understanding the subconscious mind. Emotions are everything when it comes to this. Your subconscious mind is responsible for between 94 and 98% of your results in any aspect of your life. And the remainder is your conscious mind. So, the car you drive, the house you live in, the partner you have, the job you have, you've got it all because you desired it. And it's important to just really understand how important that is. And if you can harness that, it's it's where all the answers tend to come. It's when we try to fight against desire. The secret is not to fight. The secret is to accept and then kind of deflect the desire to something else, make something else even more desirable. First, to give you an example, I mean, you could, if you were house hunting, you could, have your list of requirements of everything that you want. You want 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms,
Right.
all this kind of stuff. And then the real estate agent will kind of go, right, here's 5 properties that, fit every single one of these criteria. And you could go to the house, and this, on paper, it's perfect. And if you walk into that house and you're stood there in the hallway and you just say, this just doesn't feel right, I can't imagine myself living here, then you will not buy that house. It doesn't matter how perfect, how rationally it fits every single bill. But if it doesn't feel right, if you don't get that emotional connection with it, you absolutely will not do it. And
Absolutely.
likewise, it works the other way. You can fall in love with a house that fulfills almost none of your criteria, and you just go, you know what? I'll make it work.
I'll find a way to do. Yeah, I think I could work that. Yeah, I think I can make that work.
I'll forego all the things that I told you because this place is lovely, and I can imagine myself sitting out on the patio.
Yeah, I can see
with the
myself
grill
doing that
going.
and grilling a little bit. Hey, to answer your question, man, I'll just say this one. In terms of looking into a mirror, it's more than just watching a reflection. And I talked about it's more than just seeing a reflection when you look into a mirror. And I'm gonna put that up here. You mentioned this earlier. It's more than just looking at a reflection. It can also be about accepting accountability. And I'll just say this, guys: whatever things we don't, or whatever things we aren't willing to accept or be accountable for, we will ultimately see them again. It's just like this mirror, reflection in the mirror. Whatever things we are not willing to take accountability for, we will see those things again. And you mentioned earlier about how important accountability is and how it played a part in your recovery, because looking in that mirror helped you say, oh, I do need to see something about it. Now, guys, let me tell you something. There's an interesting fact about Andy. He lives in the UK. And if you live in Europe, there's this race that is very, very popular called the Tour de France. Now, if you're not familiar with the Tour de France, it is a bike race. The Tour de France is this grueling bike race held annually in France. It consists of a 21-day long stages over a 23 or 24-day period, and it covers about 3,500 kilometers. That's the European version. In America, that's about 2,200 miles.
Yeah.
So I want you to think about that. Riding 2,200 miles on a bike, or for all my people there in the UK that will be watching this, and all those right there in France and Spain that will be watching this, that's about 3,500 kilometers. There you go. So I can speak European. We talked earlier about looking into a mirror. What did you see and learn about yourself while being a part of the Tour de France?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about overcoming an addiction, about getting sober, is you start to ask yourself very different questions. And I thought that I would never get over it. And when you do something that you previously considered was impossible, you kind of go, well, what else have I taught myself out of? And I'd always had this kind of crazy notion. I've always loved watching the Tour de France. I love the mountains. And I just thought, God, wouldn't it be great to ride it? So at age 50, I started doing some research.
Wait, age 50? You were 50 years old? 50 when you did this?
Yeah. And so I started doing some research, and found there's a charity that does a lot of work for disadvantaged kids, and their main fundraising thing is they organize people to go and ride the entire course of the Tour de France 1 week in front of the professionals. So you do it on the same time schedule 1 week in front of them. And I was like, oh, this is great. So anyway, I called them up and I said, oh, I'm interested. Is this actually real? Is this what you do? And they're like, yeah. It's that's what we do. And I said, oh, great. Can I get some more information? They said, well, yeah, we can do that, but unfortunately, it's completely sold out for the following year. And I was like, oh well, that's a shame. Oh well, never mind. And then she said, but I can put you on the waiting list if you'd like, because sometimes people drop out and things like that. So I said, yeah, sure. Here's my name, email address. And then about 2 months later, I got a phone call and they said, right, okay, you're next on the list. Somebody's dropped out. We can, you've got a place if you want it, but we need an answer within 2 hours. And otherwise we're going to move on to somebody else. Yeah. And so anyway, so long, short, and the tall of it, I said yes. I paid my deposit and then thought, oh hell, I didn't even own a bike at this point, bearing in mind.
Wait a minute. You didn't even have a bike, but you into a bike race?
Yeah. And the biggest one. I mean, the Tour de France is
the biggest bike race in the world, and you didn't even own a bike, but you in the race.
They say it's the only sporting event that you need a haircut in the middle of. And so anyway, I manifested a bike. But there's a different story. And so, it's kind of, all right, you're this fat, unfit bloke, and you've got to try and get yourself match ready. And I had about 7 or 8 months. And so I took accountability and I just said, right, okay, I know I can do a lot in that period of time. I just need to be consistent and I need to just get the miles in. And so I started training. There's a hill near where I live that is a real steep, straight hill. And the first time I went out, I thought, right, I'll go and give this a go as hard as I can to get the top. And I got up in 11 minutes and 23 seconds. And I was, right, okay, there's my benchmark. That's the beginning of the thing. And so I would go out and do training rides. And then periodically I would go and ride this hill again. And it came down to 10 minutes and then 9 minutes, 8. And then kind of plateaued at sort of 7 minutes and something. And I was like, that's pretty good. I've knocked a fair old bit of time off. Before I went to France to actually go and ride the tour, I gave it a go. I did it in 5 minutes 50.
Oh, wow.
And then when I came back from the Tour de France, bearing in mind, I lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks.
I'm sure you did.
And I did it in 5:07. Now, bearing in mind, I started at 11:23.
11:23.
And so this is, it's just interesting that the human body is an extraordinary thing. And if you have a goal, and again, as I say around, the subconscious versus, the emotional mind versus the rational mind, there are so many reasons not to go and do that craziness. 3 weeks, can you afford to take 3 weeks off? We had a young son, my partner and I have 2 older kids. And it was like, well, you're going to have to look after all these. There's so many reasons not to do it. But I just had this vision in my mind of riding up the Champs-Élysées to the Arc de Triomphe at the end and knowing that I'd done this incredible thing. And it got a hold of me. And what started off as a kind of a personal challenge ended up being a more about the charity than that. But it was just really interesting. I learned more about myself in 3 weeks on the roads of France.
Absolutely.
Than I had in the previous. I was 52 by the time the race came round.
Wow.
I learned more than I'd learned in the previous 52 years. But there was just one really interesting thing. And I think anybody who's contemplating something that feels enormous, it's looking, what I say, look for the yellow arrows. You'll see over where are we? That way. You'll see a yellow arrow up there. That is something that I got awarded on this. But there was a guy got up at 4 o'clock every morning and signposted the
Wow.
route with those yellow arrows. And the thing is that there were days that were amazing, you know, where you felt strong, the weather was beautiful, and you're like, wow, I'm just here in France riding my bike.
Right. I'm in
This
France riding my
this
bike.
is-
That's what I'm doing.
This is great. You know, this beats working for a living. And then there were times when, and I was warned about this beforehand, there was a guy said to me, he said, look, there will be days when you wake up and you just go, I can't do this. And he
It's
said,
too much.
you'll just want to cry all day. And for sure, there were days like that. But on those days, it was, okay, what is the job here? The job is get on your bike, turn the pedals, and follow the yellow arrows. And that's it. Don't think about anything else. Every time I thought about 2,200 miles, about the Alps, about the Pyrenees, I would just like, oh no, there's
I
just
can't
no
do that.
way
I can't do that. I
Yeah.
can't do that. It's too
Imposter
much.
syndrome,
Right, right.
everything. And it was just right. Okay, I need to get small for a little while. I'm just going to follow the yellow arrows. And I know if I follow the yellow arrows, I will get fed at appropriate intervals and I will have a bed at the end of the day that I can collapse into. And sure enough, you have a bad day, you wake up the following day and it's better and you feel
right.
good because you got through it. And, you know, that whole breaking things down into bite-sized chunks, or at the very least, you know, if I didn't trust the guy with the yellow arrows, then it would have been impossible. But
Absolutely.
I had faith in it that if I rode up to a roundabout and the arrow said go straight, I just went straight. I didn't question it. And that made the whole thing manageable.
That brings me to a point, and I'm gonna bring this to a point. Guys, you said some days they were great, some days they were bad. Some days you feel like working, doing it, and some days you did not. Your addiction may feel impossible. It may feel like you can't go further. It may feel like you will always be known by your addiction, whether it's pills, whether it's opioids, whether it's prescription medications, whether it's alcohol, whether it's shopping. Let me help you out. It doesn't matter. What an addiction works the same in the brain. It
Absolutely.
works the same in the brain. Doesn't matter what it is. It all impacts the brain the same way dopamine is being released in the mind, regardless of what the addiction is. You may feel that it's impossible. And you said, Andy, that there were little yellow arrows that kept you guiding you, because you knew if you followed the arrow, you would have rest, you would have food, you would have. Sometimes you have to get small. Sometimes you say, well, you may have had this addiction for 20 years, 6 months, 8 months, 3 years, whatever it is. You have to tell yourself, I'm going to set a small thing and I'm going to follow my little yellow arrow. You have to find something worthwhile to follow. Yeah, let me put that in, and let me drop that here. You may be dealing with something right now. It may be shopping. It may be opioids. Whatever your addiction may be, you might be dealing with something right now, and it's difficult for you to overcome that thing. You're going to have to find your something that's worthwhile to follow. I know they make you feel like you're ostracized from society. I know they've been telling you you're just a pill head, you're just an alcoholic, and you're just this. You have to find something worthwhile to follow. The only way, and what I heard you begin to say, Andy, is this: as you began to follow this arrow, and as you were in this race, you began to discover things about you that you didn't even realize that were in you. Let me help you guys out. Find something worthwhile to follow, and you're going to begin to find things about yourself that you didn't even know was there. I heard my mentor say this: sometimes you have to begin to unpack yourself. You didn't even realize that was in there. It's like a suitcase, baby. Open it up and unpack yourself. I didn't know this shirt was in there. I didn't know these shoes was in there. I didn't know the potential to be an entrepreneur was in there. I didn't know this author was in me. I didn't know this songwriter was in me. I didn't know this business person was in me. I didn't know a better father, a better parent, a better mother was in me. Find something worthwhile to follow and begin to unpack yourself. There's some people right now that's listening. You just need to begin to unpack yourself And Andy, you got a hold of something that was difficult, but you began to unpack yourself. You got a hold of something that was impossible, and you began to unpack yourself. Listen, you learn more about yourself in the most difficult moments of your life. The Tour de France
Amen.
is not something that's simple. It's not something that's easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was simple, anybody could do it. He just said there were people that were dropping out of the race. There might be people that are around you who are dropping out. Baby, find you something that's impossible and stick with it. Find something that's hard and get with it. Get with something that you can get behind and unpack yourself. Andy, I mentioned earlier that you're a wellness coach and you wrote a book. Andy, this is the book that you wrote, Sober in 7. Tell us a little bit about the book, Andy, and also you are a wellness coach. Tell us a little bit, just briefly, about some of the practical things that you provide to your clients to do.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the book which highlights the kind of 7-stage process that I came up with when I was sitting around the lake trying to work things out for myself. And that's obviously been polished, honed, refined through the lens of, 6,000 other people. I mean, if you go to the website, soberinseven.com, I have free web classes on there. You can book a discovery call with me if you want to work with me. I run group coaching. I work one-on-one with people. There's lots of information on there, lots of blog articles about, just good practical stuff. I'm an incredibly practical guy, and I want to give people stuff that I know has worked for somebody, and we're all different. We'll all resonate with different things, and we'll all kind of, take lessons from different things as well. But it's drop along the website, get in touch, drop me an email, and if you're struggling, I may be able to give some insight. Maybe we'll work together, maybe we won't. That's okay. The key thing I would say is find that, in the same way that Travis is saying, about unpack yourself, get that vision and things like that. It's find something that just resonates with you. That we need to work with the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind will communicate with you through gut feel. And if something feels right, it's probably right. If something feels wrong, then your answers lie elsewhere. And that's okay. I'm not for everybody. Everybody's not for me. And that's okay. But some people love AA, and that's great. You get a sense of connection from like-minded people. And and it becomes a lifestyle almost. But what I would just say to anybody who is struggling, just don't let anybody tell you that you can't get over this.
Absolutely.
Take accountability, as we've been talking about, and it's not accountability for the outcome. Just take accountability to learn. Turn this into a learning process and go, I am just gonna, Michael Jackson did not stop me drinking. Michael Jackson set me on the path to learning how to stop drinking. And you just need, maybe this podcast is your little Michael Jackson moment where you kind of go, oh, well, if he can do it, then so can I, or whatever. But inspiration comes from many different places. It might be your child saying, Mummy, I don't like it when you drink, or
correct.
Daddy, you never want to spend time with me the weekends because you're never feeling well, or whatever. But just take it and, and put it to work for you. If there's something that inspires you, or something you've got a vision that if one day I could sort this out, my life would be better in this way, then bring it forward and that if one day I could sort this out, my life would be better in this way, then bring it forward and kind of go, right, okay, this is the gift that I'm going to give myself, and I'm going to start working at it. I'm going to find the yellow arrows that work for me. I'm going to follow them until I get there.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Andy, thank you so much for joining us from the UK, guys. He's in the UK right now. I'm not even going to ask you about football, Andy, so I'm going to leave that alone.
I'm not a fan.
Oh,
ask me about Formula One, no problem, but football.
Formula One,
like,
okay. Wow. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Andy.
Likewise. Thank you.
I'm going to get ready to get this out. Don't go nowhere just yet, Andy. I'm going to get ready to get us out of here real quick, my friend. Don't go nowhere. Guys, listen, I'm excited about this episode. This is really good. And guys, let me say, it's about that time, guys. And as always, it's been a real blast. Listen, don't forget you can tune in right here each Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central here in the United States, 7:30 p.m. Eastern to listen to the show. Or you can stream on your favorite platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, guys, and so many more. Guys, I got to get out of here. But as always, in parting, if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. I'm out of here, y'all. I got to go. Peace.